So this channel has historically covered gravel, mountain, a handful of vintage bikes, and a few e-bikes. So a dedicated road race bike may seem a little bit off-brand for us here. But I am of the opinion that you should ride whatever interests you, and this Polygon Helios A7X definitely caught my eye. Now I've done a first look video on this bike already, so in this video we're going to zoom in a little bit and focus on the drivetrain. Now specifically, I wanted to share my thoughts on Shimano's latest electronic shifting group. Not because it's the fanciest or the most expensive, but rather because it represents Shimano's lowest entry point into electronic shifting since Di2 was released. How good is entry-level electronic shifting? Does the average cyclist need electronic shifting? How long does the battery last? All those questions and more in this video. So this is the Polygon Helios A7X. It's a straight-ahead road bike with race geometry and aerodynamic design elements throughout. It represents a reasonably priced road bike for a semi-serious roadie, coming in at just under $4,000 US. And it features Shimano's Di2 electronic shifting group set, but at the 105 level. Now in the past, Shimano has only offered electronic shifting options at the Ultegra and the Dura Ace levels, which are the two top tier models. However, like most technologies in the cycling space, the premium features eventually trickle down to the lower tier components, and we're finally seeing electronic shifting at the mid-range 105 spec. Now to me, this raises a little bit of a philosophical quandary because 105 is generally regarded as the group set of the people. It's a mid-range group that performs really well, but isn't as flashy as the higher spec models. And the fact that there's now an electronic group for the masses, well, it clearly reinforces the fact that the industry is pushing us average cyclists toward electronic shifting. But is that really what we need? I don't know. Now, there are certainly early adopters of this technology, but there's also a huge group of us that recognize that maybe electronic shifting is just the newest shiny toy being sold for a premium. And it doesn't necessarily solve a problem or vastly improve the cycling experience. Or maybe it does, and you really just have to try it to understand. Well, I figured the only proper way to answer this question is to get some actual first-hand experience with electronic shifting. And so for the past couple of months, I've tried my best to keep an open mind and really embrace electronic shifting as an average cyclist, for better or for worse. So for starters, the 105 Di2 system is what some may consider semi-wireless. And that's because there's a single battery in the seat post with power wires running to the front and rear derailleurs. The controls do communicate with the derailleurs wirelessly, however, and both the derailleurs shift gears using electronic servo motors. Now there is an app called eTube which allows you to customize some of the shifting parameters, but to be honest, I didn't actually bother with the app, and I was able to set up the shifting out of the box without the need to get my phone involved. Now the group set comes paired already, but it's relatively easy to pair the shifters to the derailleurs via the eTube app. Now indexing the gears is something that I was initially curious about, but actually the process is pretty easy and you don't even need the app to do it. You just press and hold the rear derailleur button for a few seconds, and the LED will light up yellow to indicate that you're in adjustment mode. Now at this point, the shift paddles act as your barrel adjuster, and so you can use these to micro-adjust the derailleur until you get the indexing just right. Pressing the derailleur again will exit adjustment mode, and you're ready to go. And then thankfully, setting the B-limit screw and the high and the low limit screw are done normally, as with any other mechanical derailleur. Now once the shifting is dialed in, there's nothing you really need to do to turn the system on or off. You just hit any of the shifter buttons to wake up the system and you're ready to go. In the rear, you can shift one gear at a time or hold either shift button and the derailleur will sweep through as many gears as you want in rapid succession. Now this is a pretty cool feature, but practically speaking, there aren't really that many instances when you need to sweep through that many gears in an instant, especially on the 2x system where you can just drop the front chainring. Now in my opinion, the front mech is really what I would consider to be the star of the group set. Electronic or not, the front derailleur always has the more demanding job since it's got a bigger jump between gears, and critically, it has to be able to deal with shifting under higher chain tension, since the applied force is on the top side of the chain. Whereas the rear mech has the relatively lax job of pushing the chain from cog to cog from the slacker bottom side of the chain. Now the 105 Di2 front derailleur does a great job shifting precisely and quickly with minimal input. Remember, you're just pushing a button. And this may be the biggest benefit of the whole electronic shifting system, in my opinion. It's also programmed out of the box to micro-adjust based on where the rear mech is, which actually eliminates chain rub even for the worst cross-chaining offenders. I also like how the Di2 drifters have a dedicated brake lever now, since the brake paddle itself isn't used for shifting purposes. It has a really direct feeling compared to a mechanical drifter, which is something that I didn't think I would appreciate as much as I do. Okay, so in practice, the 105 Di2 system has really been pretty it's been pretty good. Flawless, I would say. Shifts are crispy and precise and surprisingly fast. Now don't get me wrong, I'm no noob when it comes to operating a 2x group set, but there's no denying that the servo motors do it faster and more precisely. Now one thing that I should mention is that the battery life for the 105 Di2 drivetrain will definitely vary from cyclist to cyclist. Now the claimed approximate battery life for the derailleurs is 1,000 kilometers, or about 621 miles per charge. Now I don't know exactly what happened, but right when I built up the bike, I thought I charged the battery fully, and I rode it a few times, totaling less than 100 miles. Now shifting was fine throughout these initial rides, but then the bike sat for about 3 weeks, give or take, and the day before I took it out for a 40-mile outing, the battery was low enough to where only the rear would shift and not the front. So the battery was low and I had to charge it the night before, otherwise I would have been out of luck for my ride the next morning. Now since then I haven't had to charge the battery and I'm approaching 100 miles from the last charge and everything seems fine. It's still holding above 50% charge. By the way, checking the battery level is really easy. For the main battery, you just press the button on the rear derailleur and note the LED status. Solid green means that you have more than 50% battery life. Blinking green means you have between 25 and 50%, and red means that you've got less than 25%. And it's actually a similar process for checking the shifter batteries as well. You just press both the shift paddles on each shifter to check the battery level. A green light means you've got between 10 and 100%, whereas a red light means you've got less than 10%. Now these shifters take CR1632 coin batteries that are pretty easy to swap out, and they're supposed to last between 2 to 4 years, which certainly sounds like a long time, but I don't actually have any data to support this claim. So anyways, the main battery issue was kind of strange, but it's also completely possible that I just didn't fully charge the battery the first time through. User error is certainly not out of the question. Anyways, the shifting does work really well. It's truly a great system. But are there any things that I didn't like about it? Well, there are 2 things that I'll mention. Now, the first one is actually something that I read about in a road.cc article, and I initially agreed with. And that's the fact that all of the brains are housed in the rear derailleur. The charging port and the associated electronics, the receiver, and the Bluetooth module are all packed into the rear mech, which is arguably the most exposed component. And so if you crash and damage the rear derailleur, it'll certainly be an expensive repair. However, after thinking about it for a minute, I kind of retracted this as a gripe because there's really nowhere else to put these electronic bits. Now, one alternative, of course, would be to put them on the front derailleur, but not everybody runs a front derailleur. And then the other option is, of course, to house everything in the centralized battery pack, which in the Polygon Helios, and I believe most other Di2 equipped bikes, is concealed in the seat tube. Now the problem with this is that you'd likely interfere with the wireless communication, and it may be inconsistent depending on the frame material. So I suppose I'll withdraw this one from the list of gripes, but it is a little bit concerning knowing that most of the critical electronic components are dangling off the rear of the bike, inches from the ground. So I said there were 2 gripes, and this one is really the main one, and that's the price. Now, going Di2 at the 105 level will run you close to $900 more than the equivalent mechanical group. Now, in the grand scheme of things, $900 may not sound like that much, especially when some of the elite level bikes are surpassing the 5-figure threshold. But remember, 105 is supposed to be the group set of the people, a group for the average weekend warrior. Now, bikes equipped with the 105 mechanical group set generally start at around $1,700 or $1,800 and go up to about $2,500 US in mid-2023. And so a $900 difference at this level is substantial with respect to the overall cost of the bike. Now, my concern is that with the whole industry pushing electronic shifting, it's just gonna further raise the entry point into a decent mid-range bike for the enthusiast. And for what, really? Will electronic shifting make you a better cyclist? No. Will it make you faster? No. Is it kind of nice to have? Yeah, it's kind of nice to have. I mean, it's definitely a nice feature and certainly makes bikes feel more premium. Now, after my testing so far of the Polygon Helios, I can confidently say that technically 105 Di2 is fantastic. It just works really well, and Shimano have done a great job developing and refining this product. However, on the flip side, I will also adamantly say that the average cyclist does not need electronic shifting. It's really not a game changer, and unless you have specific mobility issues, electronic shifting just isn't going to vastly improve your cycling experience by that much. In my opinion, it's just another thing you have to charge, and potentially another thing that you have to pair to your mobile device, another online account that you have to create, and to a large chunk of the cycling community, that almost defeats the purpose of cycling in the first place. Now, clearly this is just one person's opinion. It's plainly obvious that the cycling industry is pushing all of us toward electronic shifting. Now, how you choose to deal with this, however, is up to you. Some of you have wholly embraced it, while some of us are being forcefully dragged into the future, kicking and screaming. But who knows? Should I just accept my fate and embrace electronic shifting? I don't know. If you get a minute, let us know down in the comments where you stand on electronic shifting. I'd love to get a pulse on this community here, especially on a topic like this, which tends to be pretty polarizing. Whatever you do though, let's just try and keep it civil. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.